This is Crazy, aka Why Must I Sign In. Here I am continuing on with games from round 2 of the Black and White World Tournament. In this match we have Aner versus ImbaSkills, and as you might have seen in the bottom left there, Aner is in fact the art designer for Black and White. Here's the storm. Here you can see that Sunjan himself is actually spectating this match. And here we are just getting things set up. Now, there are a few things that were a bit interesting about round 2 of this tournament. I'm still trying to get a sense of why exactly it was the case, but even though I thought round 1 was a single elimination, Kerrigan actually returned in round 2, and so I've been meaning to ask Sun or one of the other tournament leaders about how or why that happened. But so, even though you might have thought that Kerrigan would have been out after that last match, Kerrigan was in another match against someone else in this round. Unfortunately, I don't have Kerrigan's replays. My replay pool actually is coming from ImbaSkills. And so most of my matches at for this series of streams will be coming from him. So this will be ImbaSkills roles in the tournament. Now, this might mean that we're going to see some similar builds from him, again with the Zealot opening, for instance. But it'll also give us a chance to see, okay, what different builds have people tried? Who can counter his build, or can he get away with a dedicated Protoss build to win the World Tournament in Black and White? Here's the storm. Is Protoss simply the best? That's what we're going to find out here, folks. That is what is at stake in this series of replays. Now, you may be curious about how exactly there would be tournament rules would be set up. And so I know that we're continuing on in the replay here. Tempted to actually advance just a little bit until we do finally get some activity from Aner, who is going hard income at the moment. Aner, of course, using the lava skin set. Of course, what else would an art designer do but enable the lava skin set for himself? But I wanted to also get a chance to see if I could mention some of the rules at play here. So something that Imba had been asking Sunjan about before the tournament really got going was to what extent you could control individual units and heroes, and the general consensus was that you could do very little control. And so this might seem like, well, you know, why is the APM so low on these people, right? I mean, we have a 1 APM from Aner and a 2 APM from ImbaSkills. Wouldn't it be more engaging, actually, if, you know, they had a few heroes that they could control? Here you can see that it seems as though the black team's score is actually much lower than it is, but this is... Let me double check what's going on here. You know, Sunjan and actually Scalper are both set up as observers for this match. And here we have double Zealot Reaver coming in for this turret. Now the Reaver does right now in this version of the build have 9 range. And so if Aner is going to deal with this, he is going to need to get off income, as you can see he is doing right there, and either get an income upgrade, or I'm sorry, a range upgrade, or some units. Probably with this 2 Reaver stack and air unit, but yeah, I think the reasonable decision right there is to get that range upgrade. Maybe he should have thought about getting some sort of earlier unit to avoid that, but no, instead he's just going back on hard income. He wants to maintain that early income advantage to really try to get a snowball against ImbaSkills. Is he going to manage to do it? That's what we're going to find out. Is it sometimes better to, instead of trying to go early Big Zerg versus Protoss? Ooh, we got a Widow Mine in there too. Or is it better to just hard income and try to ride it out? I have been going at 2 times speed for this section of the replay because Aner doesn't really have any units, so this is just units face tanking into the turret. Doesn't make for the most exciting gameplay match, but it is nonetheless a very important strategy worth considering. Should you just hard income into early aggression versus a dedicated Protoss player with some Widow Mines? 3 Widow Mines now, that's actually 750 minerals, which meant now, you know, in some cases you could say that technically makes this a mixed build, but the thing is that Widow Mines don't really receive the same kind of quality of life upgrades from global race upgrades. So even though Widow Mines technically are Terran, you can almost think of them as more sort of free-wielding units. Aner did go for the Rory Swan, which is one of the reasons he's so dedicated and hard on income upgrade advantage. And so Swan has some passives. His structures get plus 1.25 armor. His buildings have Achilles heel. They do plus 50% damage versus heroic units. You can see that here versus heroic 60 damage. And on the planetary fortress, that is 85 plus 42.5 damage versus heroic units. Of course, ImbaSkills sticking with the Overmind as his go-to hero, as his go-to commander. Now we have Aner getting his first unit in response, a Immortal that gets really just rolled over by those Zerglings, but it does use some of the Widow Mine abilities. Unfortunately, Aner is not really aiming for those Widow Mines, letting them get off additional shots on his Archon as this next wave comes in. A little bit of micro there might have gone a long way. But Aner does have a pretty big income advantage right now. 142 income to ImbaSkills, 122 income. If ImbaSkills doesn't manage to maintain a solid lead in aggression at this point, if he doesn't really make Aner overcompensate in defending to something, you know, waste some minerals on a poorly optimized build, then he could be in some real trouble here. So far, though, ImbaSkills has managed to really get in some good damage on that turret blocking the Perdition. The question is, you know, will he be able to finish this turret off? A turret that now, you know, it does not actually have fire suppression system, but because Aner is Rory Swan, it does have passive life regeneration. But that first turret did go down, and the Perdition turret is now down to 2,000 life. This early game aggression really pushing in. Aner does use the W ability of Rory Swan and the Q at the same time to try to keep this Perdition turret up while he continues to pump out those Archons. We can even switch, perhaps, to Aner's perspective. See exactly what he's thinking here. Turn off the leaderboard here. And so this is what the game looks like from Aner's perspective. You can see ImbaSkills has revealed his 95% win rate out of 292 games. Really an incredible win rate. Even with, you know, even if there is a bank file reset in there. And Imba really has started to even up the income amounts at this point. And the Perdition turret goes down despite those fortress and building upgrades. Aner really looking around, thinking about his options, thinking, do I need Terran? Do I need Protoss? What exactly should I get in this situation? He's been sticking with Protoss so far, but it's really struggling to deal with those Widow Mines. The Archons are taking a lot of damage, and Imba is continuing to push in. Notice that this does appear to be Game 6 for Aner, so Aner, despite being the art designer, does not, at least on this bank file, play the game particularly regularly, and he has decided to opt for Ravistors in response to this build. Now the Ravasaurus can get that 1,500 mineral upgrade to really do some big AoE damage. Let's jump to ImbaSkills perspective. He's looking at his Reavers coming in, looking at those Archons, looking at the Ravasaurs. He's thinking, okay, I've played games before. I've seen Reaver versus Ravasaur probably at this point. I know that those Widow Mines are going to be dropping in a big part to the Ravasaurs, but do my Reavers behind the Widow Mines have enough sustained damage to really keep Aner under control? You can see some focus fire there, getting those Reavers to really target down those Ravasaurs, really not wanting those siege units to stay up. And here you can see that actually Imba has taken the lead in terms of income advantage, so that early game, hard incoming doesn't seem to have been paying off for Aner at this stage of the game, as he saves up, focuses on these expensive Ravasaur units, losing the Perdition turret and the initial missile turret, while spending 400 minerals on upgrades. But Aner has been spending that minerals not just on building upgrades, but also on Ravasaur upgrades. There you can see those Reavers focusing down those Ravasaurs. Let's go ahead and start to slow the game back down now. Get a little bit of time to focus more on the composition of this build. So we have the Zealots in the front, the Archons right behind, still taking damage from that Ravasaur damage over time effect. And now Aner has pumped out a single Trask to start to continue to take that Reaver damage with the Ravasaurs in back. Now this is still just 7 Ravasaurs. Would Aner be getting better returns if he, considering he spent now 1,500 minerals on that Ravasaur upgrade, would he be getting better returns on damage with just a few more Ravasaurs to form a more solid line against this group of 6 Reavers and 6 Archons? They are cleaning up those Widow Mines behind the Archons, but also cleaning up the Archons themselves, but the Reavers behind still managed to get in, get those Scarabs off just about every wave, which really diminishes the overall capacities of Aner to push back in this situation. Ravasaur damage over time was a big response to this composition. It did stop the bleeding of the building damage, but it also pushed Aner into a losing income situation. Is it going to be cost effective, or is it going to give him a chance to get back in and win this game? Now, unlike round 1, round 2 of this tournament is best of 3. So, even if Aner wins or loses this match, he is going to be going up to ImbaSkills again, really getting it. So this game isn't just a matter of am I going to win, am I going to continue on in the tournament, but am I going to get a sense of how this player responds? Am I going to get a sense of how this player understands their counters to strategies? So even though ImbaSkills is throwing this dedicated, or primarily dedicated Protoss build at Aner, is it going to be the case that Aner is going to be able to respond, interpret this build, understand its counters, understand that Ravasaur is really, we're countering part of this build, but maybe we're not getting everything out of this that he wanted. So maybe he's going to have a time to regroup, rethink, and come up with a strong response to this dedicated Protoss build. I mean, worst comes to worst, could Aner just completely copy this build at this point, going into round 2? Could he counter this dedicated Protoss build with a dedicated Protoss build if he decides that he's unsatisfied with the output of these Ravasaurs? The income advantage that Imba was receiving has not continued to accelerate. He's maintaining a 40 income advantage as he continues to keep Aner contained in this base. As you can watch here, the Archons are getting almost, it's almost the worst possible timing where they get here just as things are spawning, so that the Archons are getting maximum splash damage on a wide range of troops. But actually, I think this is working out in this instance for Aner, because the Reavers are so on top of everything that he's going to have a hard time zeroing in and focusing them on those Ravasaurs. Aner here coming out with a range of Tarrasques. Is he already getting that Tarrasque upgrade? Let's check. Nope, no Tarrasque upgrade quite yet. That is a 1,000 mineral upgrade, giving Ultralisks 50% life steal on attack, though we did just see an upgrade there for the Corruptors. Really, he didn't have any Corruptors before, but he must be presuming that he's going to really go into either Corruptors or Devourers very hard right now in response to this carrier. 500 minerals on the upgrade. And he's going Devourers. He has 4 Devourers now in response to that carrier. So very, very different builds, and this is very, very different from the build that ImbaSkills was going up against before. There is still that wave of Tarrasques in the front. Kind of makes you think we're going to be seeing, more Immortals coming out as well. But this Devourer Ravasaur in the back is quite different from what we were looking at before. But the problem is that Aner is having a hard time having those Devourers really get into the carrier, and now the Mohounder that he wants, when those Archons and Widowmines are really cutting up the front line of those air units. So Aner is in a very rough spot here because he doesn't want to be leaking Mohanders every round. He really needs to have a strong air response to what's going on here. He's continuing to pump out Devourers, but Mohander is really dealing a fair amount of damage, cutting up some of that backline aggression. Aner now has 1,400 floating minerals. Could we be looking at... Yeah, he's looking at Mohander. He's thinking about Mohander. And he just dropped a fair amount of minerals. Was it on a Mohander, or was it on something else? Mohander is right there next to Cylindus. He could have dropped a Cylindus instead, I believe, with the amount of minerals he had right there. We're going to find out pretty soon here, but in the meantime, there's 5 seconds where it could be the case that Mohander is going to get on this turret. Oh, we have a Zeratul. Zeratul has Void Prison, which imprisons the enemy in psionic energy, stunning it and suppressing its ability to detect for 12 seconds. So although it does reduce the ability to detect, the biggest thing is really just completely shutting down the enemy hero while still making it accessible to damage for a solid 12 seconds, which is really almost the entire amount of time you're going to be looking at here, getting off another Void Prison on this second wave Mohander. Unfortunately, the rest of the wave is failing to contain the full range of damage here, and so even though a few Archons are popping, Mohander is still alive. And so each wave, this isn't going to be something that's really going to allow Aner to push out very easily. He's still going to be contained on his side of the map, still going to be looking at the risk of Mohander getting some damage on those turrets each wave, even though, as Swan, he does have the capacity to really regenerate those towers back to full. So long as he avoids letting the Mohander get very directly on the tower, he should be okay. Unfortunately, I mean, look at the damage he took on this wave. This has got to be very frustrating. He's looking at this Mohander, this wave of Archons, Immortals, and Reavers coming up, and he has the Zeratul to stun Mohander, but Zeratul can't even get to Mohander. He's blocked by the wave of Zerglings, Archons, and Immortals, and he actually dies and drops before he can get that second Void Prison off, which means that this Mohander is going to really get up here and get some damage in on this left side turret. Now down to 300, 200. That left side turret has dropped. Aner now using his Rory W ability to try to get the turret to clean up that Mohander. But Aner still doesn't really have the unit composition to deal with the sheer volume of Archons, Immortals, and Reavers here. Now 2 Mohander coming out from ImbaSkills, so even though Zeratul is stunning one of the 2, Mohander is still going to get in, and now any leak on the waves here is going to be a huge concern. Aner now floating 4,000 minerals, perhaps planning to get some big expensive heroes, perhaps a Wings of Liberty Kerrigan, perhaps something else. But is it going to be enough, or is it going to be too little too late, with the capacity that this missile turret could already be dead? This Mohander getting in there, cleaning up a lot of these Devourers, cleaning up a lot, all of these Ravasors. Mohander doing work. I mean, he doesn't get a lot of damage in on that turret, but he's cleaned up the entire capacity for anti-air on this wave. And these Tarrasques aren't going to be able to do a terribly large amount of damage. Double Mohander with a Cylindus behind, 2 Protoss damage up, so these Interceptors dealing 12 damage, which is going to be enough to deal damage to a missile turret with 7 armor. Of course, Mohander is still the primary damage output for this wave against individual towers. And this tower is going to go down right now. Aner did drop his minerals, but we have 6 seconds for his unit spawn to wave, or his units to spawn on this wave. He did get Wings of Liberty Kerrigan with her Razor Swarm and Implosion, but at 200 life, it's a big question. Is Wings of Liberty Kerrigan going to be enough to pull Aner out of the hole he's in? Or is this going to be the end of round 1 of his role in this tournament? He does not have the energy for a Razor Swarm. He did not have any units to help regenerate mana. He did not have Mothership Cores, either the Silver Core, the Prodigy Core, or the conventional Mothership Core, M Core, to regenerate that energy. And now 24 seconds, 23, 22. He can drop his Q, he can drop his W, but is it going to be enough? Is it going to be enough to stall against 2 Mohander and a Cylindus? And here's Scalper GGing, which is kind of rude, actually, for an observer to GG first. And ImbaSkills GGing as well as the game comes to an end. And so there we saw the big risk of waiting for Wings of Liberty Kerrigan against a Protoss-heavy build. Those Mohanders get in there, they do the damage, and they drop towers before you really have a chance to get the big hero counter out. I think that Aner was already in a big hole. The risk of the Ravasor upgrade did not really pay for itself in the long run. It was dealing serious damage against those Archons, and it really is a strong response to Immortals. But with the Reavers in the back, it just wasn't quite enough. And so the Trask would go in, they would get cut up, the Ravasors would get there, they would try to get their damage off, they would drop a lot of the Archons, but the wave as a whole was being pushed in pretty much the entire game. And so the big question is now, will Aner be able to come up with a strong response to this dedicated Protoss build with a preference for Protoss heroes, knowing this is ImbaSkills' preferred style of play in Game 2 of the Black and White World Tournament Round 2 series? I hope you'll continue watching. I'm going to briefly pause the stream as I get the next video set up. Stay tuned.